You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hello. How are you guys? Today we're going to talk about the 12 steps. Now, for those of you that have been listening for a couple years, you're like, wait, Michelle, I thought you said that you don't cover or go into depth about helping us understand alcoholism or addiction. You only say you help us loving someone that struggles with alcoholism and addiction. And I get that. I have said that in the past, but I think going over these 12 steps, my intention is to help you by understanding that this is, if the person you love can do some, if not all, of the things that the 12 steps recommend, then that is a really good beginning and foundation to getting sober and staying sober. So if you're like distressed and going, I think I'm going crazy, I'm madly in love with someone who keeps hurting me, who's not getting sober, I'm trying everything I know how to help them and nothing is working, is there really this big of an issue? Like, is it me? Which, loving someone struggling with addiction and having a really like sensitive heart, we as people who do that, it can be really difficult. We can start to think that we're going nuts and that our expectations are too high. So the reason why I'm going to go over the 12 steps with you is because I think they are going to help you see very clearly the expectations that you can have if your loved one chooses to get sober. It's just like I'm offering you validity to wanting more, because wanting more is not a bad thing. Addiction will try to convince you that you should be satisfied with what you have. It will try to blame you and say the reason why you're not happy is because it's your fault and you have too many problems or you came into this relationship broken. But we need to cut through that negative messaging and be crystal clear with not only this is what I expect out of somebody who I'm choosing to love, but this is okay to have these expectations. And that's the intention behind this podcast episode, is to give you guys permission to have a crystal clear understanding of what you want and what you need and what a healthy relationship looks like while loving somebody that struggles with addiction. Because it is possible. There are couples out there that do make it. There's not a lot. The majority of them don't. But if you are going to, even if you're going to leave your loved one because you just can't do this anymore, then it's really helpful for you as part of your recovery before you get into another relationship with somebody else to understand, what does a healthy relationship really look like? Like, what should I be looking for in a partner? What do my kids actually deserve to see modeled for them, no matter what age they are, right? It's really like, I actually think this is one of the reasons why we get, involved with great people who struggle with addiction, because we never were taught at a younger age, okay, these are kind of the benchmarks, that the minimum requirements for what you need from a partner in order to have a very healthy relationship. Does healthy relationships mean you're not going to fight? No, of course not. I mean, you're going to have disagreements, but a disagreement in a healthy relationship looks very different than a disagreement in an unhealthy relationship. And different people believe different things are okay. I've read articles and research from therapists that say name calling is fine. And I've read articles and research saying, actually, that's not okay. So I'm not going to tell you specifically what is okay and what is not okay as far as like those kinds of details are concerned, because really that's up to you. One thing I know for certain that I will tell you is you are an incredibly brilliant, smart, and capable human being with a very gifted brain. And if something feels wrong to you, like for example, if name calling is not okay with you and you feel disrespected if someone calls you a name, or you feel like it's considered fighting dirty, then you need to honor those feelings, because that's your intuition, that's your instinct, that's a gift, and that's kind of your North Star, pointing you in the direction of healthiness. If you are like, hey, Michelle, I don't mind name calling. In fact, I do it myself, and I don't take it seriously, and it doesn't offend me when someone calls me that, then that's fine. That's you. That's okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you should or should not be okay with. But what I am going to do is use these 12 steps as kind of, again, a permission for you to expect this this is like the bare minimum of something that you should expect in a partner. Now, why the 12 steps? All right, without going into too much detail about the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is where the 12 steps first came from. It was started by two men. I'm not going to go, we don't have too much time to go into that. But some of you might have your feathers ruffled a little bit by me mentioning the 12 steps, because they are controversial. And the reason they're controversial is because they were created in a time where the church was incredibly prevalent and Christianity was not considered, a controversial as it is now. And now today we live in a world where the mention of God can ruffle some feathers, and I completely acknowledge that. So this is not an endorsement on any part of, I'm not pushing any faith or any religion here. Thank goodness. I was about to say thank God, which would be very funny, but I'm not. Thank goodness we have women and men from all over the world, representing many different backgrounds and faiths. This is an extremely diverse community, and I love that. And I would never in a million years want to offend anybody by thinking that I am coming from a place of religion. The 12 steps do mention the word God. They do. And so for those of you out there that are comfortable with that language, I'm gonna mention it. For those of you that are not, and that is not just people who are of other faiths. You could be out there going, I have a really bad history with religion or church, or I've been wounded by someone of faith. That is incredibly common. In fact, I'm one of those people and could raise my hand to that. Then I'm going to offer you an alternative. Okay, I'm going to offer you an alternative step that does not mention God. Okay, so we're all in this together. We are all dignified, loving, respectful human beings that only want to get better and grow and learn from loving someone with addiction. So let's not get boggled down by looking at, specific sentences, specific ways. Let's keep this high level. Let's keep this big picture, okay? And I hope that you know that my heart is always for you. it's always thinking of you and going, okay, what can I talk about this week that can help their pain? That's it. That's the only intention I ever have. So let's do it, shall we? Okay, so like I said, the 12 steps. Now, if for those of you not familiar, we used to have to go over the 12 steps. I used to run a small group, a codependency small group for a couple of years, and at the beginning of every meeting, we would read the 12 steps that were modified for people loving somebody with substance abuse issues. I'm not going over those 12 steps because we're not going to discuss that today, maybe later. And then also, if you are driving or if you are walking or something and you want, we're going to start a new thing. If you want to have like a handout of what I'm talking about, I'm going to start providing, actually, I'm not going to do it. Brittany and Lori, we all three work together as a team to make the ship run for you. And Brittany and Lori are going to make a handout for you every week of what I'm talking about, and then questions. It's like a little worksheet. And our programs, we have like workbooks that are hundreds of pages. This is just a worksheet. It's one or two simple sheets, and it just goes over what we've talked about, and then also like asking you and prompting you. It's like a writing exercise. So if you want, it's free. It's totally free. So if you want access to that, just make sure you sign up to our newsletter, and you'll get a link for free, and then it will give you access to a page that will have all of the free worksheets for you. And we're going to start this. This is new. I've never done it before. So you're going to see the page will grow in links. Does that make sense? At least that's what we're going to try and do. We're going to test it out and see if you guys find it helpful, and if the way we've organized it is helpful and organized for you. So please feel free to give us your feedback, always, good and bad, because I read all of it. And really quickly, I know I'm sorry, I'm delaying, and you're like, get on with it, Michelle. Thank you so much for these reviews. I don't ask you, I'm going to start to cry. I don't ask you for them because I don't want you to feel pressured. I know how stressful your life is and crazy and chaotic it is. And the last thing you have time for is to write something, a sweet note. But I read them. And in fact, my son was reading them to me over the phone from college. He stumbled upon something and was reading them. And I cannot say how much they mean to me. I cherish them. And your words just go right into my heart and infuse me. And so today, Brittany sent out an email or a text message with one of the kind reviews that someone left this last weekend. And we all read them, and they all fuel us to keep going and doing this work. So thank you, thank you. Okay, 12 steps. So here's the deal. 12 steps are exactly that. They're like 12 one or two sentences that basically summarize the kind of credo or motto that people struggling with addiction try to live by. Now, let's just break this down a little bit. There are several studied scientific ways, theories, if you will, on how to get sober. Alcoholics Anonymous, which is abbreviated AA, is just one of those studied programs, right? Typically, they meet in churches. Typically, they have meetings, chapters, local chapters in your area, run by a volunteer. They usually sit in a circle, or sometimes, if it's a larger group, they'll sit in aisles. There'll be a guest speaker. I've attended several of these meetings with and without my ex-husband for many years. And there'll be a testimony. And what a testimony is someone that basically says, this is my story, this is what I struggled with, and this is how I am choosing to get sober. And then you get chips, which are like little poker chips, which is kind of interesting because poker is an addiction. So I always thought that was kind of funny. But these chips mean a lot to a lot of people because they are symbolic for how many days, months, years they have been sober. And when they accomplish this huge, monumental victory, they get a chip. And it means a lot. You also typically in Alcoholics Anonymous get what's called a sponsor, which is a person who has managed to get sober that is sort of like your confidant. You call on them when you feel down in the dumps, you're tempted to drink, or you're just checking in. It's basically an accountability partner. And again, this is all free. So yeah, that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. And I know some people who've gotten sober that goes to AA at the beginning, like every day. It's just part of their routine. And I know some people that have gotten sober that just go once a week or once a month. I know somebody who actually travels for a living. He's a salesman, and he looks up meetings in every city he goes to. It's like a mandatory must for him. Now, let's talk about how effective Alcoholics Anonymous is. I'm not going to get into numbers because I did that. I think I do that in the Love Over Addiction for Parents program, I think. And I honestly cannot remember the numbers right now. That's why we're not going to get into the numbers. But I will say I'm now like picturing the literature on this in my head. Gosh, I can't remember the numbers. But it's not that. Success for Alcoholics Anonymous has been proven to be not terrific. In other words, long-term sobriety, which again, it depends on which expert you are asking. Sometimes that can be a year, sometimes that can be 5 years, sometimes that can be 10 years, sometimes that can be a lifetime, is not terrific, okay? Is there a program that I have found and researched and studied that offers incredibly promising results? No. To be honest with you, no, there isn't. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it and signing up for it. So when you think about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know you guys, I know you and you're listening to me and you're going to go, that's it, I'm looking up AA, and you're going to Google it and you're going to find your local meeting and you're going to offer to drive or you're going to offer to sit with them. Hang on for a second. Let me wait till the end of this to decide if you still think that's a good idea. But if you guys know me and you join our programs or you listen to the podcast, you know I'm going to tell you that's not your job. As much as you want to be helpful because you have such a good heart and you just want to keep your marriage together or your relationship together, unfortunately, when we take their addiction into our own hands and map out a life plan that we think is excellent, and it probably is, your ideas are probably fantastic, but they're your ideas and they won't stick because, again, they're your ideas. The person that you love has to take full ownership of their sobriety and get the victory in that, right? Because if you're sitting there saying, this is what you need to do, here's your plan, they're following your plan and they don't get to feel good when they get sober because it's not their plan. Does that make sense? You're kind of ripping them off of that, even though you know better. And we as parents, for those of you that have kids, understand this dilemma too, right? It's like parenting a young child where you know what's best for them, but you need to let them fail and figure out on their own what is best. And also, let's be real, a lot of times we're wrong, or at least I am. I'm wrong in my parenting a lot. And what I think is great for my daughter is not great for my daughter. So I sometimes, am so grateful that my prayers are not answered because I'm praying for the wrong thing or I'm wishing for the wrong thing. So again, AA, back to AA and the 12 steps. So these 12 steps are like a credo. They're like the end game and they're like a guiding force. And they're a measurement for how well are you working the program. And that's language that's used in AA. There's a lot of like slogans like let go and let God, work the program, one day at a time. What's the other one? I forget. There's a lot. Keep it simple. There's a whole bunch of them. Okay, so let's go through these 12 steps. Now remember, because I've been long-winded, the reason why I'm explaining these to you are so that you can understand when you look at your loved one, you can measure them according to these 12 steps and go, okay, so where are they in their journey of recovery? Or do they check the box on 1 of these, 3 of these, 0 of these, 11 of these? So that you can take inventory of your relationship and you have a foundation and you can go, okay, this is what we're aiming for. And this is where we are at. On a scale of 1 to 12, we're at a 2 or we're at an 8. Okay? So let's go through them. Step number 1 is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Okay, so this is key. Now, part of your struggle, I am guessing, because it was mine too, at the very beginning, and this struggle lasted for me for years with my ex-husband, was just trying to prove to him that he really had a problem, right? It was trying to convince him, look, I don't think you should drink. I think you should stay away from alcohol, or later on, that drugs were an issue, right? First of all, they will never admit it until they are ready to admit it. It can be so obvious to you and to everyone else. They can lose their jobs. You can lose, we can go broke. They can go broke. They could, throw up all over the kitchen floor. They could pee next to the bed and and not even go to the toilet. You can catch them on video being absolutely embarrassingly ridiculous. They can walk into the kitchen the next morning and see the mess that they've made with all of the food or the alcohol bottles. You can even mark the bottles and show them how much alcohol they've been drinking. None of that will be a reason to admit that they are powerless over alcohol unless they want to admit that. People, think about it, have lost their whole families, their whole income, have ended up on the streets and are still not ready to admit that they are powerless over alcohol or drugs or any kind of addiction. So when they hit step 1, it is a huge deal, because if they are willing to not only admit to you and go, you know what, I absolutely cannot, I don't know how to get sober, or I don't know how I'm not going to drink or use drugs or gamble or look at porn or how, deal with my sex addiction or whatever. I don't know the answers, but I know that it's ruining my life. I know that it's hurting the people that I love tremendously. I know that the consequences are outweighing the rewards. When that day comes and they look at you and say that, it is so, I remember the day, and oh my gosh, it feels like 1,000 pounds lifted off your shoulder, and it feels like the weight, like it just brought so much hope, because now you're dealing with someone who's willing to be truthful. You don't have to walk around trying to convince them this isn't normal. Your behavior is not normal. And not only is it not normal, it's not healthy. So when they realize and recognize out loud to you, and then when they recognize and start talking about it to friends or to bosses or to other members of family, oh my gosh, then you're just like, hey, like, woo, because it is so courageous to have the courage, that's redundant, but sentence, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's truly putting your struggles out there for the world to judge. And let's be very freaking real. There is still a huge stigma about addiction, around addiction. There is. People judge, and it's not fair, and it's not right, and it infuriates me. And that is why everyone I know, the postman, the woman who's checking me out at the grocery store, my best friends, new acquaintances that I just met, I say, I love somebody struggling with addiction and had to leave. And this is what my kid's story is. And this is what my story is. Because we have to be willing to share in order to break the stigma. And so when somebody sits there publicly and says, I have a problem, or I'm just choosing not to drink because drinking or using drugs doesn't bring out the best in me, oh my gosh, major respect, okay? And so when you're looking for somebody, I just decided, you guys, I'm only on step 1 and there's 12. We might need to break this up because I don't want to take up too much. I try to keep these 30 minutes and already we're 26 minutes into this and I'm only on step 1. So wait, I just stopped myself in the middle of that sentence. Where was I going with that? Anyways, step 1 is a huge victory, you guys. And when your loved one claims out loud that they have a problem, it just feels like a breath of fresh air, and hope is on the horizon, right? Now, for those of you that love someone that has done step 1 and still not getting better, I hear you. You're like, yeah, Michelle, been there, done that, and nothing changed. I totally get that. And that's why we say loving someone that struggles with addiction is like a roller coaster. It's like you have highs that are so high and wonderful, and you're free and you're raising your hands in the air and the wind is blowing through your hair and you're like kind of scared but super excited and like, this is great. I feel alive, right? Loving someone that struggles with addiction can make you feel incredibly alive. All of your senses are being felt all the time. They make you feel so special and loved when they are present and sober and doing well. And when step 1 can definitely bring a high. It can definitely be, a huge feeling of hope. And then if you're like me, and for those of you out that are like, yeah, but ... there's more to the story, then yes, it can also bring tremendous lows. Because typically, historically, statistically, just admitting you have a problem and step number 1 is not the antithesis or it's not the beginning of their recovery, right? Otherwise, there would only be 1 step. But there's 11 more to go here, because it doesn't summarize and wrap things up. Usually people that say, okay, I admit I have a problem, don't go, okay, I'm going to start going to AA. I'm never going to have a drink again. No, it has happened, but historically, not the majority of people do that. Okay, should I go into step 2 or should I wait till next week? Should I just break this out into... Let me go into step 2. You can press pause if you need to go somewhere and then just come back to me when you're doing other things. But let me just at least do step 2, okay? Wait. Okay, maybe I shouldn't go into step 2. I have something more to say about step 1, though. Okay, so you know how I just said step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Okay, for our community, when I read that sentence many, many, many years ago, like over 20 years ago, I was like, BS. B freaking S. No. And the reason why I felt so viscerally upset about it is because I hate the word powerless. I cannot stand it. And maybe that's just the fighter in me. That's the feisty woman. That's the, forget that. I'm not powerless over anything. I am a powerful woman who absolutely has autonomy and control over her life. Now, our community, remember, is not filled with people who struggle with addiction. We just love someone struggling with addiction. And we believe we are powerful. We are not powerless over addiction. We believe that loving someone that struggles with addiction means we have the right, the confidence, the power within ourselves to choose our reactions, to choose whether we stay or leave, to choose our words, or to choose to keep a quiet mouth. We are not powerless. Powerless means, to me, powerless over addiction in the context of loving someone struggling with addiction. Powerless means just letting them walk all over us, right? Powerless means, oh, you know what? I'm going to let him keep my ATM card and my credit cards, and I'm going to allow him to give me a monthly allowance that he monitors, right? Powerless means, nothing is in my name. Everything is getting, in his name or her name or whatever. Powerless means making yourself available anytime they need you for anything and never saying no. Powerless means settling for less than what you deserve and need and require in a relationship. Powerless is passive. Powerless is just waiting for them to get sober so that you can start to feel better. And I say BS to all of that. Now, what I think the 12 steps, that language between those two founders when they wrote this, I agree with that language in context to someone struggling with addiction, right? I get that. They're saying one drink is one drink too many. When there's something being triggered there that we have no control over when we begin our addiction. I get that. But for us, I just want to clarify, we absolutely in our community do not believe that we are powerless over addiction at all. That I will not stand by that. Okay, let's go to number 2. So number 2 in the 12 steps is we come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Let me repeat that one more time. We've come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So what does that mean? All right. It means, in my mind, and this is Michelle's version, I didn't get this from anywhere else, so take it or leave it for what it's worth. In my mind, it means that the person that we love that's struggling with addiction is not turning to anyone or any material item, whether that's drugs or alcohol or pornography or sex, or a relationship. So turning to you or turning to a relationship with their best friend or their drug dealer or their drinking buddies, or their, whatever. And they're not turning to a car or a job or a house as something, so it's a someone or an object or something to return them to sanity, right? So they're not placing their power outside of any material items on earth or any person on earth. Meaning, and this is really important for us, when they are not placing their sobriety in your hands. They are not allowed to blame you for their addiction because they understand and take responsibility that nobody else and nothing else is going to save them from their choices, that it's their responsibility to entirely take full ownership of their choices around whatever substance they are addicted to. And that can be incredibly relieving for us because you and me, let's be real, we think, okay, I don't know about you. I'll just be real with myself. I thought I had the cure and answer to his sobriety. I thought if I loved him enough, if I was the best girlfriend and then the best fiance and then the best wife, that somehow, some way, something I could do eventually would make all the difference in his choices around addiction. And maybe you're feeling that way too. And so step number 2 is saying, look, you can't blame me and you can't turn to me or anything or anyone else to take responsibility for your sanity, restore you to sanity. Because I love the word sanity in this. I think addiction causes insanity amongst everyone. That's why they call it a family disease. For every one person that is addicted, 7 people are affected. That's a statistic that is, I don't know if it's common, but it is out there. So that could be a boss, that could be a parent, that could be children, that could be a spouse, but it is quite literally a family disease. And it makes us all feel insane because it's, a repeat of the same behavior over and over and over again. And you all know that insanity, the definition, it's crazy to expect different results. So when the same repeating patterns are being repeated. So if you struggle with the idea of, in that sentence, that they say a power greater than ourselves, right? For some of you, that's going to be God. For other of you, that will be remained the universe, whatever. It's basically, the point I want to make is they are taking full ownership. And when it comes to us loving someone that struggles with addiction, I know for me, my ex-husband knew me before we started dating. We were friends in high school. And I think one of the reasons why he was attracted to me and why he wanted to date me is because his life had become insane on some levels. And I think he was smart enough to understand that he had problems, right? And I think there was a attraction to me thinking that I would be able to save him. I think that was, Michelle, she has her crap together. She always helps people. I think he thought that I could really help him change his life around. And come on now. I was willing to step up to the plate because my ego, it made me feel really freaking good. It made me feel really important. And I was like, heck yeah, I will rise to the occasion. Not only can I save you, I can help you live your best life. And let me tell you the ways, which is so ridiculous when I think about it. And I'm not judging myself, but I am saying that's funny. That's really funny, Michelle, because no, you can't save anyone, but it felt really good to feel so important and to allow someone to depend on me so much and to kind of be the hero in the story. I had never quite felt like a hero. And so it felt really like it served my ego to have this good looking, super smart, really talented guy choose me, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, of course I can help you. Even though, you guys, I had never been around addiction or knew anything about addiction. And I don't think he was even willing to, he wasn't even at the point where he knew he had I think he did know he had a problem, but he wasn't willing to like share that with me. He just wanted help sorting out other details of his life, right? Like the drugs and alcohol weren't even mentioned. And I was so naive coming into that going, well, it didn't even occur to me, to be honest with you, until I was madly in love with him. And then I started to clue into the fact that, but took years. So we are happy, or I won't speak for you. I was happy to be considered the quote power greater than himself to help him. I stepped right up to that role. And this step 2, we've come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 2, I think, allows us to be released from this job that either we were wooed into taking, that we were courted and into accepting, or we raised our hand and was like, yeah, I'm totally that. I'm the power that you've been looking for. I'm definitely the power greater than yourself, because look at me, I have my stuff together. For me, I was like a young executive, had my own apartment, was managing all my own bills. Like, yes, my stuff don't stink. So come on over. Let me teach you what I know, which we can all laugh at now and go, Michelle, you had nothing together and your stuff definitely stank. That's it. You guys, we're going to stop at number 2. I don't want to overwhelm you. This is a lot of information. So next week we'll cover 3 and hopefully 4. But if you want to know all the 12 steps, that would be awesome. And go get that free worksheet. I believe we have it's on our homepage. You can just sign up for the email on our website, which is loveoveraddiction.com. Okay, I will talk to you next week. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.